All right.
Marty?
Yeah, okay. Look at this mess.
Are we ready? I call this meeting to order. Please silence all your electronic devices and stand for the invocation given by Councilperson Bayakowski.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight and wish you all a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season. But more seriously, I'd like everyone to think about all our members of the military that are stationed in places quite a ways away from here. They won't be with their families this holiday season. They won't be with their friends. They'll be working to keep us safe and secure. They're stationed in some of the worst areas on the face of this earth. You know, the big challenge for a day sometimes is just get the sand out of your food. So I'd like to ask everyone to please bow your heads, say a short prayer for all our members of the armed forces. Thank you. Okay, if everyone will follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do.
George, did you want to pass this around?
All speakers should have signed up in advance with the city clerk. Each speaker will please use the podium in front of us. Please state your name and address before beginning your statement. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes. Please address your comments to the chair, that would be myself. Council will not engage in debate with the speaker. On your first bell, you'll have 30 seconds left. Please wrap it up because I'm going to have to stop you very close to your second bell, okay?
Rachel Curtin. Good evening. I'm Rachel Curtin. I live at 22 Richmond Avenue. Thank you for your work tonight and every night as you serve our great city. You have a packed agenda and a lot of exciting things are happening for our city, and for your work, I am grateful. Mr. Jankowski, I believe we've spoken about this before. I'm bringing my concern to you because as we look forward to the future that is being mapped out for us, the one thing that I really see limiting our promise, limiting really the potential of our city is the large amount of semi-tractor trailer traffic that trundles from the New York State Thruway exit down 98 through our city past the Peace Garden that you really can't see because it's blocked by a semi, past the Holland Museum, down 63 taking that shortcut. As I live just about a tenth of a mile away from 98, I hear it. I literally hear it every single morning between about 4:35 and 4:50 in the morning. Clunk, clunk. It's the same semi every morning coming through. I know I've got about another 20 minutes of sleep left. And as wonderful as routines are, I really don't appreciate that one. I hear them. I hear them when I'm in my yard. I hear them when I'm running up and down the sidewalk. And as somebody who loves this city, and I think about how we want more feet downtown, how we want more pedestrians, how we want a greener space, that to me is a major issue. And as I'm noticing these trucks run through, these are not our local deliveries, friends. These are Ontario, a lot of them coming through by the hundreds every day. And I hope that you will put this in the presence of mind as you are planning and understanding what's going down down on Ellicott Street and the impact that these trucks do have on people that live in the neighborhoods that are right by 98 and 63. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jacob Bodway.
Hi, I'm Jacob Bodway, 22 Richmond. This is going to be a 1-2 punch. First Rachel, now me.
There you go.
So yeah, I work from home quite a bit, and I can see the intersection on Richmond and the 98. I count 3 semis a minute. So that's, in 10 minutes, that's 30 semis. So in an hour, we're talking, over 150 semis. So we're talking in the thousands a day going through Batavia, not stopping here for any reason besides using our city as a shortcut. I've seen the traffic stopped from Main Street all the way up past Richmond, waiting for semis to take a left onto Main Street. It's the point where I don't feel safe going downtown, to be quite honest. I ride my bike pretty much everywhere, and the idea of going downtown to grab a bite to eat or grab a beer is kind of foreign to me because I'm worried that I'm gonna get hit by a semi. I think for Batavia, for the next 10 years looking forward, you need to address the amount of semi-traffic coming through the city, somehow rerouting them around, somehow doing anything you can to get it so it's just a safer environment for the residents of the city, especially people who want to be outside, who want to be on the trails, who want to be on the sidewalks, who want to go on a run. It's just decreasing the cost, or the cost of my home value has gone down, I think. The noise is obnoxious, and it just doesn't look good for, for people who live here, especially people who live on the 98. I imagine anybody who lives on Oak Street would be extremely frustrated having semis basically right down their street every day. So I urge you to just to think about this, like my wife said, and keep it in your mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam DeSalvo.
Hi everybody, my name is Sam DeSalvo. As a runner, I'm also afraid of semis all the time, and I run about 20 miles a week, so I totally understand that. But I wanted to talk about a different issue, and that's mainly the housing issue in Batavia. And I don't think that government's role is to micromanage people's lives. Government's role is to set up structures in society so that people can live safe, productive lives. And Batavia's housing is becoming an issue, particularly for young people. And as somebody who is probably half a lot of your ages, I am facing a very different problem than what most of you are. I looked into buying a house. My closing costs are north of $10,000, and not a penny of that goes toward the actual value or the cost of the house or the loan. About $4,400 of that on a $100,000 house is a year's of tax, and I had to pay 2 full years of taxes. That'd be over $8,000 just on that alone. So it's very difficult for a young person to get started with housing. Now, we tout that Batavia is a city, and we are not mimicking what we do after what the cities around us do. Buffalo and Rochester are facing a similar issue, and they're making proactive steps, whereas Batavia is not. The last figures I heard were that 58% of Batavia is rental properties. That means that if that number swings by 8% more, the number of rental properties will outnumber the number of homeowners by 2 to 1. And that's astonishing for a community that used to be family-oriented. It's now turning toward a tenant-based city, and we are doing nothing to help that along, or to stop that. I think that there are 3 things that we could do, or I should say that you all could do, to try to prevent this and try to turn it back around. And 2 of them are modeled after Buffalo and Rochester. One of them is a different idea that I'd had. Buffalo has a landlord training class that teaches landlords how to write a lease, legal jargon, their rights, and a myriad of other things. And many landlords say, well, I can't do this because of landlord rights, because of X, Y, Z. I don't think many landlords understand fully the legal things that they can do. I sent all of you a link this morning to what Buffalo does and a list of things that they do with landlords. I think you should all take this a lot more seriously and look into that. The second thing is the city of Rochester has a vacant house problem and a problem where nobody wanted to move into the city. Now, there are a myriad of reasons why people don't want to live in downtown Rochester, but I'm going to focus on the housing issue specifically, not on the other cultural issues there. In terms of the housing issues, young people did not move to the city because they couldn't afford it, number 1, and number 2, there weren't jobs in the area. Rochester has started a housing program with first-time home buyers where they give them a tax break or some kind of financial benefit to buying a house downtown. Young people bought houses, took those ghost properties, and then started investing in the community and buying groceries downtown, going out to shops downtown, dinner downtown, that sort of thing. So your investment is returned by having young people who will be there for a while because now they're homeowners who will invest in the community. The third thing that you all can do, and I think this would benefit a lot of you, having lived here for a while, is creating some kind of longevity homeowners tax break that gives people a tax break on their property taxes if they have lived, or I should say owned their home and lived in it for X number of years. You could say 20 years or 30 years. And I would not open this up to landlords who've owned one property. I would open this up only to single-family owned homes. And those are three ways that the city can work to try to combat the housing issue so that we are not overrun by tenant properties, and that we can start bringing in more young people, have people live here, and help elderly and young people and business owners. Thanks.
Thank you. Council response?
Yes.
Bob?
Thank you. I'd just like to respond to Mr. DeSalvo. Those numbers aren't exactly the status of the properties in the city. The city manager is working on getting us an update, but at the time that was derived, it was 58% of the living spaces. And so one apartment complex could have 150 living spaces, which would mean, the way that was presented, people got it confused, and they said, oh my God, every other house is a rental property, which isn't true at all. So we will, I've talked to the manager about it, he's working on getting an update and getting some information, some actual data as to the number of houses, not, because you have apartments, and then you also have some seniors complexes and some other public housing too. So it is a little deceptive, that's all. Thank you.
I would like to address once again the truck traffic situation on 98. This now is the fourth and fifth resident in my ward that has expressed the concern for the Route 98 truck traffic, which also ends up becoming the Route 63 Ellicott Street traffic, and also the Main Street traffic as well. You may have remembered a while back, I brought up the first concern of two residents on Pickthorn that had expressed concern of not only the noise factor there, but more importantly, the safety factor of the speed of the trucks coming down, trying to run through that light there at Richmond and Oak, not only the truck traffic, but the speed of the cars trying to get through there and beat that light. So we discussed that as a traffic safety issue, and I believe Marty had said that he was going to address that with not only the chief of police, but also the task force as well. The recommendation from one of my residents at that point was, you know, I realize that there's not a lot we can do because it's a state highway and there's no way we can put restrictions on that road, but maybe if we enforced the speed limit dramatically on that street, it might discourage some of that truck traffic. And Josh and I had a discussion just this afternoon about that, talking about how our hands are kind of tied because they are state highways, but also there might be some ways to, other ways that we need to look at to discourage that traffic or reroute that traffic. But it's becoming an issue, and we're hearing, every time I hear this, all the residents I'm hearing it from are young couples and young families. That's what we're trying to encourage to come to our city. Those are the people that we're trying to invite in and come and live here, and we're hearing from that same demographic that this is becoming such a problem, they're not even comfortable living here anymore. So I think it's time. I think we need to pay some serious attention to this, and we need to make some strides in looking into the possibilities of what we can do to reroute, discourage. I don't know what those things are. I said to Josh, I've been on the road for 35 years covering the Glow region. Every day I'm on highways, every day I'm on 63, every day I'm on 98. I live right up on 98. I'm on 33, I'm on all the major highways. And I used to go to Geneseo quite a bit, so I took that 63 corridor, and it was always so loaded with trucks, I started to detour around and take 20. Then I noticed, this was about 10, 15 years ago, I noticed an increase of traffic on Route 20. And a decrease, actually, it seemed like a small decrease in our area, and so I realized that a lot of these trucks in the truck world, the word must have got out that, hey, hop on 20 off of 63 in Pavilion and scoot in right into 77 and up 77, you can hop on the thruway in Pembroke, which makes more sense for these truckers because it's a straight shot, there's no city to go through, it won't slow them down. And now over the past quite a few years, I've noticed our truck traffic in the city increasing again. I've been out on 20, I noticed that's a little bit quieter, so for whatever reason, the new generation of truckers haven't figured that out. I'm just saying there's gotta be a solution to the problem. I think we need to look into it. We have a deer problem, we're looking into it. We have a truck problem, let's look into it. And then let's not just do studies. If we go to the state, we've gone to the state before with that intersection of Oak Street and Richmond when Jason was here. And we went to Jason a couple times on that. He went to the state and the state said, no, there's no problem. There's not an enormous amount of accidents there. We've done the studies. We don't need an arrow there. And we still have accidents at that intersection. So I don't know what the solution is, but I know we keep getting complaints about it, so I think it's time that we take a look at it.
Whose bright idea was it to have one lane instead of two? Was it worse before?
That was the state idea of slowing things down.
That's a disaster.
Well, that's whatever, but that was the explanation I received. By making it one lane, there's always somebody going slower and they're gonna hold everybody up and you're not gonna have a speedway through there. That was the thought. Anyway, go ahead. You done? Okay.
I just wanted to add another aspect to this, because I know where those trucks go at night. I live on North Street right near the hospital, and at night, huge trucks, the one that says God on it and the one that says Fry Brothers or whatever it is, sneak down North Street, turn at the hospital and go down Summit Street. They're not even supposed to be there unless they're coming to the hospital. But I'm a night owl and I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that is where they all go in the middle of the night. So if it's quieter for you, that's why I have them. So I have the same problem. We get them at night and they pull down the wires and everything because that little part of North Street is simply not ready for that kind of traffic.
You know what, Gino, maybe we could reach out to Steve Hawley and Mike Ransenhofer, because I know when there was a problem with the traffic like on Oak and that light, I know Councilperson Bayakowski talked to him about it, and he contacted Mike Ransenhofer, and we got an arrow there. Remember? So I'm just thinking, I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe if we reached out to...
It was corrected in 2 weeks.
It was, yes. We reached out to Steve Hawley and Michael Ransenhofer.
That was a lot simpler than this, though.
Well, one of the things, and
Well, can you just, hold on, is anyone else?
No, that's...
Okay, go ahead then.
one of the things, I was on the committee in the state DOT when they redid Oak Street. They absolutely said, we're going to put a 8-foot divider in the middle of Oak Street and 4 feet on each side, and the reason they did that, it's illegal to have parking in a driving lane on a state highway. So they said, we're gonna eliminate that, and they said there's nothing else could be done. And I did get a hold of Assemblyman Hawley, discussed it with him, he made some calls, they came back, and the engineers did not realize I could overhear him. They said, boy, I thought this was gonna be a simple engineering situation, now we have a full house, we're in trouble. So then they changed it so they allow parking on the side, and, you know, the local people did speak up, said, we don't need a 10-foot wide median down the center of the street, it's wasted space, so. But you were right, Mr. President, they did say that, you know, we're gonna go to 2 lanes because the traffic, the speeding there was just out of control.
And the same thing on Ellicott Street. I mean,
Right.
there'll be times coming in from East Bethany, there'll be 20, 30 cars putting along, and everybody's stuck behind an individual going a little slower, but that's okay, that's what it's supposed to do. So it does work. Maybe at least something we could do initially is explore taking the ordinance where they use the Jake brake, which is the loudest annoying noise that probably most of the people are hearing. Most of the trucks themselves don't make much noise, they're mufflered down, but the Jake brake does rattle your windows when it comes through. So maybe that's something we can do to get started, but again, we're talking about a state highway, and the trucks travel the state highways because that's the only place they can go for weight limits and so on, and they're built for them. So how do we divert them away from a road that was originally built to handle truck traffic? So that's an interesting question. We could at least direct the city manager to look into it and give us some options. Maybe other communities have had similar problems, and maybe they came up with unique solutions. John?
Yeah, one of the things I did notice on 63, in the time that that truck traffic started to lighten up on 63, is every day, throughout my run of 63 from Batavia to Geneseo, I can't tell you how many trucks were pulled over with a state trooper standing on his step talking to him through the window. So they were ticketing, and there was a lot of roadblocks there. They stopped them, they were checking registrations and inspections. And I think that truck traffic lightened up because a lot of those truckers must have been talking and said, hey, avoid 63 because they're pulling everybody over. So you can deter that kind of traffic if you make it very difficult on them. And that was one of my thoughts. If we, for a certain amount of time, if we focused our efforts on speeding on 98, and you pulled everybody over that's going over the speed limit on 98, and the word starts to get out that they're really enforcing the speed limit on 98, you might want to avoid it. Some of those truckers may find another way around instead of coming through Batavia, just like they did on 63. Like I said, it was a direct correlation between the amount of enforcement I saw on 63 and the amount of truck traffic that decreased on 63 at that time. So the word gets out. Just like the word gets out, hey, it's a nice little shortcut to take.
Well, and I'm not so sure that there's the speeding, when you have all that traffic, it's not the speeding, they're looking at other things on the trucks, because there's other kind of requirements a truck's supposed to have.
Exactly.
So they're doing road checks on trucks specifically, and we've done that in the city as well. But the other thing is, you know, they're gonna need a place to go, and it might be as simple as their electronic routing system, Google or whatever they use, might be taking them through the city, and there might be just following that, and that might be a simple fix as to how they come up with these routes and maybe provide alternate routes that maybe shave some time off. If I'm a truck driver doing this for a living, I'm gonna wanna save that time. So maybe there's even a simpler way, maybe it's just some algorithm that Google's using and they're rerouting them and not realizing, and they're just following. I mean, when I go someplace I don't know, I use that kind of thing, and it takes me where it takes me, right? So it could be that simple. Bob?
Yeah, I might suggest this as an idea, though, is with some notice and some time, have the state DOT come down and have a public information meeting, and let the DOT, the state DOT, hear from the citizens of the community.
That's a good idea.
And that's what we
Yeah,
did.
that's something to
Good
look
idea.
into and see what our options are and see what possibilities we have, at least to understand where we're at. I mean, Route 98's always been that way, so I live off 63. It's always been that way. In summer mornings with the windows open, I can hear the truck traffic from several blocks away, but I also have a train going through my area too, so I mean, there comes a point where does it all
Where I live on
balance out?
South Main, they come by there to go onto Walnut Street, same thing, the trucks.
But I know the Jake brake is a sore thing. I mean, I don't really hear the traffic. I hear the Jake brake is what I really hear
Yes,
from my
yes.
house. I don't really hear, car traffic is kind of a different kind of noise, and so is semi-truck, unless they're really trying to go up a hill or something with a heavy.
The other noise factor on 98 is when those trucks hit the manhole covers that are like potholes instead of manholes. Yeah, and I go down there with my camper and I'm trying to weave around those manholes because by the time I get to the campground with my camper, everything's strewn all over the place inside.
Yeah.
Well, that's another, I mean, that's another thing.
But that's what the trucks, that's what these people are hearing, is that ba-boom, ba-boom, and you hear, especially at night, it's like, it's incredible. I hear it at my house.
Well, these are things, it may be a multifaceted approach on this, from the informational part to maybe making the road different, if it's even possible. But again, it's a state highway, there's not much we can do to it. It's a state-regulated
Right. The road
thing.
itself, there's nothing we can do with.
I mean, there might be. I mean, these are things we need to check into, so I guess right now, we're in information gathering, if there is anything we
that's
could
a good
possibly
idea.
do.
How do we proceed forward, though? I don't want to walk out tonight and this just gets fallen through the cracks like it did last time. How do we make this happen?
We direct the city manager to look into it and report back to us, I guess, and see what our options are.
Another thing on your list, Marty.
Maybe something-
I apologize, but.
I like that dot idea.
I like that.
Already on paper.
Now, understand, we are going into our budget year, so give us some slack. Everything right now is all hands on deck for the budget. So usually, sometime in February, March, we get to the end of that. And then pretty much March, April, May, we got a couple months of not much going on, and we could maybe direct some resources there. So, but I don't want it to be forgotten, like
No,
you
no.
said. But at this point, we have to be realistic. we have priorities of what's going on. This is that crazy time of year for us, so just understand that. Unless we want to go with a 5% tax increase and just call it even, I'm good with that. but- No, I'm just joking.
Joking.
Just joking. We got to really tighten up this year too, so we got to be
Excuse
careful.
me, you
I'm sorry, go ahead.
avoided me again.
I'm sorry, go
Okay.
ahead.
Talking about the traffic and the trucks on the highways, the reason they come through Batavia is because they don't have to pay for a fee once they get off that thruway. And that's an incentive to them. What we need to do, George, is to see if we can charge them coming through Batavia. I mean, it might be a state highway, but it'll alleviate a lot of problems for a lot of people. And, you know, it's a possibility. We won't know unless we try.
Councilperson Christian, respectfully, I'm going to go ahead and suggest this is just initially as a state highway, we're not going to have the jurisdiction to enforce a toll on state highway. Okay, we can look into other options through the city manager's office, through the Department of Public Works, through the police department, but in terms of having jurisdiction and the ability to preempt what the state does with state highways, I would respectfully suggest that's probably not going to be an option we have the ability to execute.
We can find out from DOT or even East Bethany how many accidents have been caused on the curve by Little Canada. People have been killed there every year. So we have to
We're
do
kind of talking
something.
about the city though, right?
Well, they're coming
understand,
down
I understand.
63. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're coming 63, 98. It doesn't matter. People are getting killed because of these trucks.
We just
okay?
don't have any control out there. That's all I was just
Well, we
suggesting.
got to do something, you know. Anyways, Mr. DeSalvo, Pat Stone has a landlord's program for people, and they help them to get the right people, have background checks on them and everything else. And of course, our city allows background checks for landlords, so people should take advantage of that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Just on the landlord issue, it's a business, and I understand landlords, we can provide a help and maybe give them some education, but if they go into that business, I would hope they have legal advice and they have somebody that can guide them through eviction processes. I don't know of too many landlords, other than sending a letter out. After that, they have to get legal attorneys involved. So I'm just concerned about the cost. I mean, we have limitations on what we can do and what we can provide. And then the information we provide, if it's erroneous, we're liable for that. So, I mean, I saw the Buffalo article, and it was interesting, but it didn't really go into detail as to who they had teaching it and how they were funding it and all that. It was just more of an offer. Twice a year, they invite landlords to come in and get a class. So if Pat Stone offers that, that's even better, and they might do that just for people that are involved with subsidized housing, or I don't know.
Councilperson Christian and I are on the crime task force, and Marty can tell you, we are going to be addressing that issue.
That's right.
And I know in the Fifth Ward, and we're having a meeting tomorrow, Fifth Ward, if there's problems with certain landlords, Marty and I, we call that landlord and we have him come in and we meet with him and we address the issues with him. One of them is going to be tomorrow, okay? So again, we've got that covered in the Fifth, but we are discussing that. It's going to be addressed with a panel at our crime task force meeting.
So you're talking, just so I get this clear, you're not talking about educating landlords, you're talking about landlords who aren't taking care of their properties in a way that's causing a problem in a neighborhood, and then they need to be brought in and talked
The
to.
meetings that we're having, that Marty and I are going to be having, are with landlords who we're having a problem with.
Right.
The crime task force, we're going to be addressing the landlord issue in more or less welcome them to come in and join the crime task force, and so we could all work together and so forth and make the living arrangements. So that's kind of two.
And that was one of the things too, it was a volunteer thing.
Yes.
So even in Buffalo, if the landlord says, you know, I know better, I don't want to go, you can't make them go.
Exactly.
You can't enforce it.
That's right.
And whatever, but it's an idea. I mean, any education that would help is a good idea.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Okay. Communications.
There is one on here, it ended up on here erroneously, we are still waiting for a couple responses, so we're gonna wait on the.
So the GLOW one is
Walmart.
actually not complete yet?
Correct.
So you'll put it on
On
another
January.
conference agenda at a later time? Okay.
Why not?
The next city council business
Excuse me.
meeting will be held Monday, January 13th.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
why isn't it complete yet?
Because I haven't gotten responses from all the departments.
What departments are you referring to?
For every event application, I send it out to Public Works, Fire, Police, and get a response from them if they have any questions, concerns, what their costs are for overtime and material costs. And that's usually on a summary that you guys get in your packet. And I have not received responses back from two of the departments that I'm waiting for. So therefore, these don't usually go on here until I get responses from all the departments.
Okay, well, maybe you can add to the list, what is the women's group rising for, okay? Does this group believe in the United States Constitution? Does the Women's Rise group believe in the Second Amendment to bear arms?
Ms.
Is the
Christian,
woman-
we don't get into the reason why.
I
It's
don't
not
see
us
why
to-
not.
We don't vet the group as long as they're not doing something illegal. If they want to have an event, we just make sure that they do it safely and within the codes of the city of Batavia. That's all we do. We don't get into their personal beliefs. We don't get into what they believe or don't believe. And I understand your concern, but that would be something to address with them. It's not
Okay.
really our job to do that
All
vetting.
right, well, I really don't want our policemen to stop at intersections for people because we have traffic lights and all pedestrians have to either stop or go when the light changes, so I do not want to have that. And then I couldn't understand on this one part of this application that they want barrels over there to take out the trash, but they're going to take out the trash. They've got to explain what that means to me. Thank you.
Anyone else? So we'll put that on another. Okay, can I announce the next business meeting? Am I not missing anything? We're good? Next council business meeting will be held Monday, January 13th, 7 PM, City Hall Council Boardroom, second floor. So I noticed that event is the 25th. So we're going to probably have to make sure that's on there, the 13th. You feel that'll happen? Okay, good. Now some good news. Proclamation time.
Okay.
We're going to proclaim the excellent job that was done on the hostage situation, or not the hostage, the barricaded situation. If you guys want to come up, please.
Yes, yes.
Toll booths. Fire chief, sir? You know, you too. Everybody involved. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to read this. As you're aware, Chief, thank you. As you're aware, there was an incident back on November 18th, and for a while there, it went for pretty long, and it was inclement weather, a lot of people that don't understand the situation were making comments and things like that. We just wanted to recognize all that were involved, and this is probably still a sampling, it's probably still somebody, there was a lot of people down there. So whereas the City of Batavia, New York is committed to ensuring safety and security of all those living and visiting Batavia. And whereas on November 18, 2019, Tennessee County Dispatch Center received a 911 call for a domestic disturbance at a residence on Liberty Street. And whereas officers from the Batavia Police Department arrived on scene, encountered a male who had barricaded himself inside the residence. The female victim was located and found safe at a neighbor's home. The suspect, who remained inside the house, threatened officers and was armed. Immediately, the Batavia Police Department, along with assistance from other law enforcement agencies, set up a perimeter around the residence for the safety of the community. And the Batavia Police negotiators were called to the scene along with Batavia Emergency Response Team, the New York State Police, Genesee County Sheriff's K-9 Unit, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation K-9 Unit. And after approximately 20 hours, City of Batavia police officers negotiated the surrender of the suspect. All officers on scene and civilians in the neighborhood were unharmed during the incident. Therefore, City Council, City of Batavia do sincerely thank Batavia Police Department, Tennessee County Sheriff's Office, Orleans County SWAT, New York State Police, New York State Police SORT Team, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation K-9 Unit, Monroe County Sheriff's Crisis Negotiation Team, Tennessee County Emergency Management, Tennessee County Dispatch Center, City of Batavia Fire Department, Mercy EMS, and the numerous citizens who supported the efforts both on the scene and the days following these incidents. Thank you guys. Thank you for being there for us. Thank you very much. Anyone like to say anything?
Well, I'd just like to add, without the assistance that we were rendered that day with the multiple agencies that are here and not represented, this certainly could have gone a different way. So I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for assisting us that day. We rely upon you guys. We even got Monroe County to come out and give us a hand. So thank you very much.
The chief makes a very important point. People, I guess, don't realize, you know, because you do this, but not everybody realizes that when they call 911, an officer is going to come, whether it be from Monroe County, State Police. In an instance we had with a train incident, we had officers from all over the state responding to help out. So thank you very much, and thank you for your continued working together and your efforts to keep us safe. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
All right. Anyone have any comments in reference to that? Okay.
Job well done.
Yes, absolutely.
The Creek Park Ice Rink feasibility presentation. Do I need to move? Are we doing a projector thing?
Yeah, just a second. I'll kind of fill council in real quick. Here back in the spring, we had an opportunity through a grant and some private citizens who supported the grant to do a feasibility study for what we refer to as the Creek Park area next to the ice rink. There's been several thoughts as far as future development of that area, and one of them being what should the recreation use possibly be for that as well. And to be quite honest, we weren't quite sure what the demands truly were, what the economics of it were, and things of that nature. So for the city's really cost of the application fee for the grant, we were able to commission CSL, which stands for Convention, Sports, and Leisure Company, as a consultant to review that area, the market demands for the entire region, and everything that goes in along with that. The full document, or the document you have in front of you, is really just kind of a light version. Excuse me. We went through the first initial draft, which is about 3 times this size. It has an awful lot of more empirical data that is really not appropriate for the presentation tonight. But we did want to have that presentation so the City Council could see a little bit of what has gone on in anticipation of the final draft or the final document, which will be hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And we do have Bill Kruger here, who's one of the principals with CSL. We'll be doing the presentation. So I guess if I could ask City Council to come sit here, we'll drop the screen and do a quick slide presentation and then answer any questions the City Council has after that. So, Bill? And while you're doing that, I will attempt to do the AV.
Anybody know a good joke? Yeah, you trying to run the AV?
suggestions.
Rachel.
Transfer, because usually you gotta go to dual monitor. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but that's where dual.
That happens usually. It goes with that, except, let me just try resetting the, unable to connect to projector.
It's not detecting.
175 million. Little.
Here we go. Okay, we got it.
Let's give Matt a round of applause, shall we? All right. Well, thank you very much. My name is Bill Kruger from CSL International. Council members and city staff, it's great to be back to talk a little bit about what we've been doing over the last 3, 4, 5 months now, I think. CSL is a firm, advisory firm based out of Minneapolis. We've got offices in Dallas as well. I've been with the firm for 25 years. We do studies like this all around the country, markets of all different sizes. Very small markets to the very large markets. So anything related to sports recreation facilities, anything related to sports tourism facilities. We get into convention centers and stadiums and arenas and all those kind of public assembly facility projects. So I've got about less than 20 slides. And so as Matt mentioned, I'm going to be recapping some of the highlights of what we've been doing really quickly. I'd love to entertain any questions that you may have at the end of this presentation. Any questions that you've got about what we've done and what the findings are and any insight that I can share with you. So this slide right here talks a little bit about what we've been doing, the project background and approach. So we're looking at an indoor multi-sport complex in Batavia. The key elements are right there in the middle. I think this was, which one was the laser one?
The middle button.
The middle button. There we go, okay. So the key elements, market analysis with any type of feasibility study would start with understanding what the market opportunities are, getting into things such as the local market conditions, what, everything from demographics to the supply of existing facilities in the marketplace, looking at competition, inventory within the regional area of competitive products, and then getting into having conversations with stakeholders and user groups and potential user groups that we're not looking at. Most sports related facilities that are amateur sports, youth sports facilities are those that both accommodate local groups, clubs, high schools, youth sports associations, any types of those kind of local users, in addition to tournament activity on the weekend as well. And so the most successful facilities around the country are those that can really balance both of those. So that's really a big part of what we did, is focusing a lot on conversations with different user groups, local and non-local, to see if there's opportunities to grow the marketplace by virtue of having a new facility complex of some sort. That concluded with an understanding of what the supportable building program, the product, the concept might be. We, as a part of our team, we've got CHA Consulting, which is the architectural design firm that have experience throughout the entire country as well. And so they helped us develop a little bit of a conceptual plan and put some construction cost numbers to the products that we've kind of outlined that we'll get into here momentarily. And then lastly, a cost-benefit analysis, cost to build, cost to run it, and then economic impacts on the benefit side. So one of the council members was talking about, making sure that the community, Batavia, is inviting to families, and it's a quality of life issue. For a lot of these types of products, not only can you drive sports tourism, so new visitation, new visitors that could drive economic activity into the community, largely on the weekend with the tournament type business, but most importantly, the foundation really is providing quality facilities for families and youth, and making the community inviting by having a complete array of facility products that are open to the public and open to families. So the study process, as we've done it, we've I've done more than 500 studies around the country myself. Our firm's done more than 1,000. We did a local market visit. We met with lots of different groups early on. We did these in-person meetings and focus groups. We toured the Folletti Ice Arena as an example and looked at the Creek Park area site. We did lots of telephone interviews and a whole host of other analysis steps. So just stopping for a moment on the arena. Now, I'm an old hockey guy. I grew up playing hockey in Minnesota, and I'm a hockey coach and things like that. So, hockey and anything related to ice facilities have a kind of a special part of my heart in terms of looking at that. And this is a facility like we see all around the country. One that's aging, is 30, right now is 40 years old or more in terms of the type of product you've got, and you've got certain aspects of the facility itself that are clearly showing its age. And relative to the state of the industry of other ice complex facilities built around the country, it's certainly, the differential is certainly widening in terms of the quality of that product, its capabilities, the amenities, the ability to be competitive within the tournament market and to serve and grow local users as well. It's certainly more and more limited year over year. So just from a physical product standpoint, let alone even looking at adding a second sheet of ice, there's some pretty fundamental weaknesses and limitations of the physical product right now that's certainly apparent. Importantly, it's really served as a productive asset for many, many years. You look at some of these numbers, we took a look at the different groups that it accommodates, the key users right now with GAHA and the Batavia men's hockey and then the two high schools as kind of the primary 4 tenants, but lots of other uses throughout the entire year. When the ice is melted, you've got some dry land, dry use of dry floor space use of the facility itself. But overall, when you look at the number of users, the annual use hours, about 1,600 hours per year, you've got a lot of bodies, a lot of families and kids running through the building year over year. And so it's been a productive asset for many years, serving as what we were talking about before as being that community asset, for families, for sports, recreation, leisure, wellness, those kind of things like that. However, over the past 10 years, we're starting to see total hours dropping or decreasing somewhat based on the historical data that we looked at. Importantly, compared to industry averages, so one of the things that we look at is what is the base of users that exist today, and how is that trending, and how does it stack up with other comparable projects around the country? In order to, because if you add a second sheet of ice, certainly that can help you tap more into the tournament market by having 2 sheets under one roof, but you have to have the foundation of the local use midweek to be able to support that, both financially and from a utilization standpoint, and just from a logical and productive use of public funds, typically in order to make an investment in a second sheet. So right now, unfortunately, the usage on a per sheet basis, it is below average than of other projects that we've seen around the country. So right from a local perspective right now, this is before having conversations with tournament producers, which we did next, but just the utilization right now is below the average from what we see in other markets that are contemplating going to a second sheet of ice. Competitive ice complexes, we looked at these throughout the region, and clearly you see the Buffalo and the Rochester kind of concentration of some of those facilities. These are ones that offer 2 sheets of ice or more, within one facility. So we took a look at those. We inventoried those to understand some of the competition. I'm just going really quick through some of these slides here just to make sure that we get to the main points. We also looked at, since we're looking at an indoor sports facility complex, a trend around the country that we see is actually getting to a flexible, multi-purpose kind of a building that's, typically when you look at facilities, the ones that are most expensive to run are the ones that are the most niche kind of spaces. So that's ice, that's aquatics, those kind of facilities like that. We see a lot of hard court facilities, we see a lot of turf facilities being built, especially in northern climates with respect to the indoor turf type facilities. So we wanted to make sure we expanded to anything of an indoor kind of a complex, and we looked at some of the competitive supply, and again, kind of concentrating in the Rochester and the Buffalo areas. Facility trends, this just, a number of these things that we see in products that are being invested in and produced and developed in other communities of all different sizes, they tend to align with what we see in all different types of facilities, where there's an emphasis on quality of common areas and spaces for families and different things to do and different amenities to draw them in. So we've got, a proliferation of facilities that have multi-courts in one facility, multi-sheets of ice in one facility. You've got amenities, you've got performance areas, you've got fitness and wellness areas. You've got food and beverage that's much more, it's a whole different ballgame from what you've got right now in Folletti Arena as an example. And so communities that are investing in these, if you're thinking about how competitive could we be if we added a second sheet of ice for tournaments, this is kind of what you're running into in terms of competition. That's what the bar is kind of raising. So the price tags for a lot of these projects, as you'll see at the end of this, is a fairly significant cost in order to execute a project like this. But it's kind of one of those situations where there are improvements that you can make with your existing facilities, but if you want to get bigger and get into a certain different type of facility product, you kind of need to develop up to industry standards, or don't do it at all, It's one of those kind of decision points. Oh, I'm sorry.
You notice that when you did these around the country, some of these facilities, are they mostly owned by the city, or are they privately owned?
I would say that most of them, if they're multi-sheet complexes, well, it's, most of them are run by communities, by cities. So, owned by cities. When they're run, they're either run via third-party private management or by a user group that's managing under contract, or by the city via the Park and Recs Department or something like that. That's typically how we'll see it. One thing that we noted when we looked at Folletti Arena as an example is it's a little bit opposite how you're doing things, frankly, relative to the industry standards right now, because Furlan Management is in there running it under contract, and they're spinning off a profit sharing or a payment to the city, whereas most facilities that are run by a third party, oftentimes they just have a mandate of breaking even, or more prominently, there's actually a private management fee paid to the private manager, because most of these facilities operate at a deficit, whether you're 1-sheet, 2-sheet, or 3-sheet complex. If those are standalone and are integrated as a part of a larger business operation, like a elite fitness club of some sort that may have some ice sheets in it, where there's other, membership dues and fees kind of flowing through the business operations. If they're just standalone products, typically, 80% of them or more would be running at an operating deficit every single year. So the smaller your market, the smaller the user groups that you've got, the fewer the tenants that you've got, you would more frequently see a situation where you'd be at a significant operating deficit that would have to be subsidized by the owner, the facility, so the city as an example. So right now you're in a situation where the mandate is there's a fee payment that needs to be paid to the city, and so it's correlated with respect to some of the management you may be seeing and some of the issues operationally and in terms of repairs and maintenance and things like that's being reflected year over year. Did that answer your question? There are some that are owned privately, but normally they're either in larger market areas or they're affiliated with some bigger business operation, like a health club or a college or a university or something like that. And the reason why that is because even if you were able to break even operationally, there's not enough profit to pay off to make debt service payments on the capital side. So typically these facilities, like most sports and recreation facilities of any type, whether it's an outdoor field complex or an indoor multi-purpose court facility or turf facility or something like that, normally they may come close to breaking even or maybe even show a modest profit, but there's always that capital hurdle that they need to get over, which is why city ownership or county ownership or some public sector ownership is typically the way that a lot of these communities address those issues. And furthermore, for facilities like this, what you want to be able to do is make sure that they're accessible and affordable for families, first and foremost. So there's no, you don't want to be charging them an excessive fee. So when you look at some of the privately owned facilities, oftentimes they're niche or specialists, where they're trying to focus on their own in-house programming, their training, their camps, their clinics, and oftentimes there may not be availability at an affordable price for local families to come in for local recreation uses or other types of youth programs. This is kind of the summary of what we found. So again, as Matt mentioned, we've got a long presentation, and we just, we focus the whole market demand conclusions on one slide here. But overall, we think that the ice demand, unfortunately, doesn't really rise to the level of warranting a second sheet of ice is kind of a key priority in terms of a strategy. However, it's clear that improvements need to be made to Folletti Arena. I mean, it's very deficient right now, and the strategy for any option that is pursued in terms of any kind of a investment or new product development should really first and foremost include improvements of that particular facility off the top. Indoor turf demand in indoor court space, there is demand that we noted that's not being met right now for those types of products. So we'll kind of get into that in a second in terms of what that means in terms of facility size and what it can accommodate and what some of the performance might be of that space. But overall, turf and court space are two that we certainly found opportunities. Turf is one of those areas where in certain areas of the country, there's just lots of demand that could be filling it up. Everything from any type of outdoor sport for off-season, there's a growing need now for training, for off-season training. Whether it's batting cages that are in there and you've got baseball and softball training, or whether you've got lacrosse or rugby or football, there's lots of things that can take place in those indoor turf areas. And if you have a quality facility that's priced right and affordable and accessible, there's lots of different uses that can kind of genesis from that. And you can also have more sports tourism aspects on the weekend as well. Indoor court space is, the indoor court facility is one of the most flexible and highly utilized type of facilities that we see in every market. It's everything from, if you've got hard court, you could be doing basketball, volleyball, dance, cheer, wrestling, table tennis. You go right down the list. There's lots of different things that can take place in those types of facilities. And with the right types of netting and amenities, those kind of products would be kind of the typical product that a lot of communities across the country are looking at, where you get a critical mass of courts in one space. So they're different from high school gyms in that they've got 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 8 to 12 courts within one space. And so you can be really tapping into tournaments and lots of local users that's concurrent in terms of programming. Location in the Creek Park area, as of all the areas that we've seen throughout the city, it does make a lot of sense, particularly if it's part of a strategy that incorporates or involves Folletti Arena improvements too. If you're thinking about anything new, whether it's a court or turf facility, tying that into improvements to the arena as one kind of a sports complex product, you've got nice proximity to downtown, that's walkable. You've already got an existing known location for your sports facility product in Folletti Arena. And you've got this within this opportunity zone and this development area as part of a master plan that certainly has the opportunity to really be in one of the most attractive locations that we've seen within a community like Batavia. So the market indicated facility options that we've kind of landed on would be, the recommendation would be one of these 3 types of options. Based on conversations with the city, we ended up focusing on option 1 and option 2 initially here. So that would be an indoor turf and a hardwood facility, kind of a combination facility as option 1, and option 2 would just really be focused only on turf. So again, this is not something that ultimately, the decision may be that we might pursue this or pursue maybe ultimately a smaller facility or maybe not pursue anything at all. We're just, saying that there's market demand for these kind of products, and we're going to show you what it would cost to build, what it would cost to run, and what some of the economic impacts are, the cost benefit. And certainly, that may be a decision that this community would want to pursue or maybe it won't, just depending on what your appetite would be for some of that. But there's synthetic turf with option 1 of a 200 by 200 turf surface, and then you've got 3 full-size basketball courts that could really split into 6 full-size volleyball. Option 2 would really be the turf only, so it'd be really effectively a full-size soccer field under roof. So you've got a facility that's got a very high ceiling, 35-foot tall ceiling, column-free, for some of these areas. And, so it is a fairly large footprint that we're talking about. Option 1 and option 2 are effectively the same building footprint. So that's kind of how they would look. But you can see there's ways to do lots of different activities. You've got kind of an infield for baseball, softball. You've got batting cages that you could set up. You could break it all up into 2 separate, half-field soccer soccer orientation or lots of other types of training. This would be the full-size soccer field. You've got lots of amenities that you would stack. We've designed this kind of really efficiently where you kind of stack levels 1 and level 2 of some of the locker rooms and some of the support space and food and beverage. But that's kind of what we see around the country is a state of the industry kind of orientation or layout of these types of spaces. So the potential site orientation, just at the very initial concept level, this is kind of how, one option might look. So you've got the Folletti Arena. There's an opportunity to tie in a new facility and tie in this into one campus now under roof. So you could, make improvements and there'd be a connection and you could be sharing some of the locker room and support space and food and beverage. And you've got this kind of an area within the Creek Park area that theoretically could kind of make a nice home for the sports and recreation product. Can't really see any of those numbers, I bet, but this is a lot of the construction cost estimate. So when you get down to the bottom line, the hard costs, soft costs, site costs, the first estimate of some of these option 1 and option 2, big price tag. I mean, $27 million for option 1, $26 million for option 2. That's kind of what the state of the industry product would be for these two different options. Certainly you could come in cheaper, but then it gets down to that decision whether if you're not going to do it right, why do it at all? If you're just going to build effectively a warehouse with a bunch of columns and not have the amenities and the things that local users and the sports tourism and the tournaments are looking for, then why do it? So that's just kind of a fundamental philosophy point I tend to make. But as far as the Folletti improvements, though, we've kind of went through, and at least the first blush of thinking about what things need to be done, there's lots of recommended things that certainly are queuing up and backing up that need to be addressed, or that we recommend that should be addressed soon. Some potential additional items down here that we would want to, take a look at or have you take a look at a little bit further detail. But for right now, I mean, the cost for just the renovation of the arena could be $3.7 to $4.9 million when you kind of think about what the cost of those individual elements might be. So we ran through a lot of cost benefit, like a lot of cost benefit analysis too. I don't need to stop here discuss this too much, but we broke it down. We have a model that kind of goes through model utilization, occupancy, different sports uses, league teams and tournaments and things like that. You get a lot of use. You've got a ramp-up period that goes from year 1 up to a stabilized year at year 4. And this is how we typically model these. So you've got different types of users with the indoor turf and hardwood, and you've got more of just the turf-type users with the option 2. Estimated attendance, so what you see is a substantial amount of bodies that can be flowing through this, if you have these types of facilities. So as much as 241 individual event days, or 241,000 event days that could be flowing through under an option 1 and an option 2. You've got lots of opportunities to drive people to an area. And oftentimes when you're thinking about a mixed-use development or an economic development project, that wants to revitalize a downtown or an area, oftentimes these projects can be great for that, where you're attracting people and it's not just an event-based attraction where it's like an arena or in a stadium or an amphitheater where they're all coming in at one time, like on a Saturday night or a Friday night. I mean, this is activity that can be flowing through every single day of the week during different hours of the day. So oftentimes communities look at these and say, oh, what kind of people magnets can we use to kind of draw this stuff to ultimately influence ancillary private development of other things within the area? And these can be great vehicles to do that. The financial operations, so really what we're looking at with option 1, the indoor turf and hardwood, when we start projecting out all these different operating revenues, operating expenses, when you look at the stabilized year, once you ramp up, you still are looking at an annual operating deficit, which would be consistent with projects throughout the country that we see of this nature in markets of your size. So it's not really even a situation that you should bank on it being break even. So if you wanted to go the road of this option 1, that's kind of what the financial performance might look like year over year. This doesn't include debt service, so this is just the revenues less expenses for the building. The indoor turf facility that's specialized in all indoor turf could do a little bit better, but you're still looking at a situation where you'd have an operating deficit. Certainly you could outperform that. It's not unheard of, where we've done a study like this where we come in and we say, here's what we would project it to be, is we tend to come in conservative, so there is opportunity to exceed our projections, as an example, in a lot of markets, and they have in certain markets. We don't want to set that pro forma at a level where the management crew is always chasing a number and they never really achieve it. So we want to make sure that we position whoever's operating in something like this, if it's built, that at least they're able to meet those projections and you have an understanding of what it might cost to run something like that. Economic impact, there's a lot of concepts up here. We tend to look at construction, in-facility, out-of-facility spending. A lot of numbers up here, but what this really shows is there is an economic impact of about, for option one, of $16 million in output, which is direct spending, indirect and induced spending, added together of $16 million per year that could be attracted by virtue of the visitors coming in for tournaments and games and people that don't reside within Batavia, and then accounting for the in-facility operations of the building itself. A summary overall of those projections. But just to kind of wrap up in terms of conclusions, this is kind of our cost-benefit summary. You know, you've got the development costs for the facility option one and option two, and you've got the Filetti Arena improvements, and then you've got some of these estimates with respect to attendance and financial operations, et cetera. So that's really where we're at today in terms of looking at things. We certainly think that they're, you know, at a bare minimum, Filetti Arena improvements should be one of the top priorities for a project like this. We think that there's an opportunity if you want to look at ways to pursue an option one or option two. It certainly doesn't have to all be on the shoulders of the city, as an example, in terms of funding it. There's lots of, you know, prevalence or markets of your size around the country of private sector getting involved with some of that, and then certainly grants and other types of funding, whether it's state funding or other types of economic development funding that could be brought to the table. And certainly those could be evaluated and looked at to try to assemble some kind of a capital stack or some kind of a financing plan to start pursuing a project like this. But certainly a project like this, an option one or option two, combined with Filetti Arena improvements, could certainly elevate the sports and recreation facility marketplace within Batavia. And certainly there are indications that it could certainly benefit the community and its residents. Yes.
What type of a facility are we talking about? I know a lot of the facilities that my kids have played in the cities are those, I don't know what you refer to them as, I see like a balloon tent type facility. Are those passé now? Are they going with like hard facilities, or is that a possibility?
We've got lots of case study pictures within the larger document, but just as an example, this is more of the kind of environment. This is not really a full-size or even a half-size field, but you can see that it's a hard roof, 35-foot tall ceiling. You know, the state of the industry for these products would normally be the dimension of the facility I talked about or larger, but they'd have a netting that would drop down so you could partition off the certain spaces where you could be doing lots of different types of activities. You could have some seating if you wanted to have more like a championship game or tournaments or certain types of spectators within there, but real flexible. The dome type facilities, oftentimes the domes are affiliated with outdoor field complexes where they may dome one or two fields, as an example. To extend the seasonality and to do some off-season thing within there. Those tend to be extremely expensive to, you know, when you do a dome, you either leave it up all year because you're going to be incurring a couple $100,000 just to take it down and put it back up. And there's lots of labor and costs related to that. So typically the flexibility that a hard roof structure where you've got permanent turf or permanent hardwood, and you've got all the amenities where it's a plug-and-play venue for people just to come in, rent, use, and then leave, you know, but you've got all the other amenities that go along with it. If you've got a dome structure, a lot of times you don't have the ability to have all the other amenities, food and beverage, concession, cafe, training, wellness, performance spaces, and things like that. So the state of the industry has a lot of those pieces, and they tend to look more like the one in the bottom right.
I have a question. The repairing the ice arena that we have now, is that included in that $26 million cost, or would that be $26 million plus to clean up the ice arena?
Yeah, so these are all, you would do either option 1 or option 2, and then you would add Fletty.
So if we, let's just, for sake of argument, they chose option 2 for whatever reason, it'd be 26.6 million approximately, plus up to 4.9 million to finish the other half of the building.
Correct.
So we're talking a good piece of change.
Yeah, that is a good piece of change, yeah. So, but the reality is this, even though it's shown at the bottom of this list, this Fletty improvement number should be.
Yeah, that's something we should be paying attention to.
Exactly, yes.
Bare minimum, then maybe.
Right. And if it's something that the city's interested in, it's something that you could certainly continue to put out. You know, a lot of communities that I work with, you know, will have their feasibility study that will demonstrate demand, which this does. Then there's ways that you can go to start, you know, understanding if there's other private or other partners we could bring to the table, public and private, you know, to help on the capital side. Is there RFPs that you can issue, you know, for development opportunities and see if you have any takers or interested parties that come to the table with interesting ideas or proposals? I mean, there's certain steps that you could take that wouldn't be at really any significant cost to you in the near term to continue to vet that out.
And that's a piece of property that's been under, they're looking to develop that at some point anyway.
Right.
So economic development agencies are already aware of that, so maybe start with there.
Sure. Exactly. Yes.
Anything else?
One other question. In your studies, did you consider if we went with a facility like this, and then all of a sudden Batavia is a major spot on the map, and everybody discovers us and says, this place is phenomenal, okay, and now our ice demand goes up. Is there a way that we can add a second sheet of ice to this facility?
That would be a great dilemma to have, wouldn't it?
Yes.
You know, so, but yes, with respect to this, you know, this is just high-level conceptual. So certainly, before, you know, you'd want to certainly vet out the site. You'd want to do a more detailed analysis of look at what the options are. Certainly, it's any plan that moves forward ultimately once you start having all the details figured out in greater detail based on what the concept is, who the partners are, what the funding mechanism is, what the timeline is. You'd want to make sure you vet out expansion opportunities, because the last thing you want to do, I believe what you're alluding to, is box yourself in with no opportunity to expand, where you'd have to start over, and you don't want to do that.
Well, I just hear from a lot of hockey families, my family included, my sister's family in Rochester, that in the hockey sport, in the sport of hockey, ice time is like, you can't find it. I mean, it's not available. I mean, ice time is like gold to try to find. And I'm just thinking, if this is the case and the sport continues to increase, the ice time.
It certainly could, because once you have these people magnets, you get on the map of more non-local people that aren't familiar with your current arena, right? So once you start getting more people coming to this area, it begins to establish itself as a quality brand, you know, of sports and recreation and sports tourism. Having that opportunity, or at least a plan to expand, like what you're saying, you know, is certainly going to really behoove you to make sure that those ducks are in a row before you start investing anything like this. You know, I know where I grew up, and when I came up playing hockey through mites all the way through high school, you know, we had one arena. When I started playing, they had an expansion path. So they built a second arena when I was in high school, and now they're up to 4 sheets of ice, all lined up, you know, right next to it. But if they didn't have that opportunity, they would have to abandon, frankly, that location and that product and then go build somewhere else.
Isn't there a place in Buffalo that made a sports arena, different functions, the hockey, the basketball, whatever, and it went under? Didn't that
Rochester?
just Buffalo?
Or Buffalo, I'm sorry.
Just happened recently?
I can't recall which one that could be. Does anyone else know?
How much time and how many players how many different teams do we have playing over here right now? Because apparently it went down quite a bit.
Yeah, so you've got the 4 primary tenants. So you've got the Youth Hockey Association, you've got the Men's League, and you've got the 2 high schools as the primary tenant groups. GAHA, the Youth Hockey Association, from what I was told, has about 242 skaters. So that's a relatively small number in the broad context for what I've seen, for particularly communities that are looking for adding a second sheet of ice. So it's something that can be built on, but it's certainly reflective of the size of your community and the fact that within 45 to an hour drive, you've got other quality products in Buffalo and Rochester where some of that travel, activity can be drawn to.
I would just add, Rosemary, the full report has an awful lot of that demographic data, how many people are within a 30-minute drive, 60-minute drive, an awful lot of that. And I guess the one thing to keep in mind is, Councilperson Canale mentioned, some of the demands for ice are very real, but what we look at is, you can create that demand, people are traveling on the weekends and things like that, but you still have the cost of operating that Monday through Thursday, where necessarily people from Buffalo and Rochester are not necessarily traveling here. There you're relying really on your local population to support that. Right now, we didn't see that as the result of this feasibility study.
Yeah, because the demand is way down. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And these figures, I worry about the 40 million was going to cost us for the new county jail that jumped up to 60 million. We desperately need a police department, a new police department that's anywhere right now at 15 million. It might even be higher next year or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of demand on people, and people really need help. They don't need more taxes from the city, the county, or the school district.
Yeah, what I've found as we went through this process was very enlightening to me, is that I've seen in the public works class over years, the demand for recreation has just gone up and up. I mean, several times we've had issues here at City Council, whether it's youth sports or adult softball, where there's concerns on the demands and the facilities that are available. So that demand is there. What was eye-opening to me is you see some of these numbers and everything else, is the approach has to be regional. So I think this is really a building block to have discussions with partners like the county and the town, so that we're not duplicating facilities. We're each finding our niche, if you will. If the soccer fields are going to be in one location, the hockey facility should be here, an indoor turf unit should be here, and not have 3 of them in the county and dividing that up. So this is really, again, it's a feasibility study. We're kind of on the high up looking down, and there's an awful lot more data to come here, but it's really the building block to have an idea of what is really out there and what can we feasibly support as a community, and City Council make those decisions. Sure. As staff develops that.
That's very feasible if the county and the town and we all get together on something like this, fine, I wouldn't object to it. But if we're the only ones getting into this, I probably wouldn't vote for it.
And like you said, the county's building a very expensive jail, and they're going to be handling that debt for many years. And another thing we talked about during this was the ice arena. It's a unique thing because all the equipment for those kids is quite expensive, so it kind of limits a certain demographic of people that can afford that, especially if they have several kids that want to play that sport. Soccer in a turf is a little easier fix for that than ice with all the equipment and all the expense. And every year they outgrow it, and sometimes twice a year they outgrow skates. You have to buy them, they're not inexpensive. So that could be why some of that demand has gone down a little bit, because the economy was kind of hurting for a while, and people have to make choices. And so it remains to be seen. Those numbers could fluctuate a little bit too, so I don't know. Again, like you said, if we partner with the college and other agencies that would utilize it, that could be a big help. And we have to look at how that's going to play out.
Sure.
The other factor that we have to look at too is that we probably, here in the city of Batavia, are not seeing any increase in usage of our facility, simply because the plain and simple fact is we have a terrible reputation within the hockey world, youth hockey world. Our reputation for our facility is absolutely terrible because of the condition of it. These families are families that are going to facilities every weekend, and the facilities they're going to are phenomenal facilities like we're talking about. We just don't have that. So we're certainly not going to see an increase. We're going to see a decrease in use of our facility over time if we don't do anything.
Yeah, as, Bill and I discussed along the way, we have a 40-year-old facility and it's starting to show its age, and there's some things that need to be done to make sure it stays competitive and stays a community asset. And we need to figure out ways to do that, and the staff needs to help council. And again, none of us are promoting we're going to stick a shovel in the ground next week to build a new ice rink or anything like that. But this is an important step to have an understanding of what can be supported, and so that we make informed decisions along the way, and try to help council.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Now we'll see if I can shut this down.
Here you go.
George, this public hearing that's coming up, is this in reference, what part of this feasibility study, what is this for exactly? Matt, this public hearing?
Yeah, the public hearing is, as I mentioned, a lot of this feasibility study was funded through a grant, CDBG grant. So there is a requirement to close it out. We are at the end of the project. We're looking to close out the grant portion of it, to have a public hearing and allow any comments that people might have on the feasibility study or the process that we use to do that. And again, there'll certainly be additional available opportunities for people to make comments and input on the final study. But, at this point, the public presentation was made, so we want to have the opportunity to let people have any comments from the public so we can close out the grant portion of this project.
Now, is this normal to do that well within the same meeting, or normally don't we, give it some time for people to read about it, digest it, and then do it, or?
Yeah, well, we
Or
did
this is more formality for the closing of the grant?
It is. We advertised it ahead of time in anticipation so that people could at least come and observe the presentation and make their comments.
Okay.
Again, it does not preclude additional future comments or inviting people to do that, but we are trying to check a box for the grant funding to close out the grant portion of that. So that's really the reason that it got pushed to this point.
I understand, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments on this, so. So let's start. We have a public hearing, so a motion to open the public hearing. Mr. Bayakowski, seconded by Mr. McGinnis. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilperson Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely? Yes. Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Okay, is there anyone signed up to speak?
There are no speakers signed up.
Does anyone like to speak? Go ahead, Sam. You can come up first. You got to come up and step, and we'll do it, and then, John, you'll be next, and go from there. And now, this is related on the feasibility study, and that's what you have to keep your comments to in this particular case.
Yep, so I run about 20 miles a week. I already said that. Oh, they left. I also play in 3 soccer leagues, and I drive to Buffalo and Rochester for them. My sister plays in 4 soccer leagues. She drives to Buffalo and Rochester for them. If you're telling me that I can walk 5 minutes down the street and save myself a 45-minute drive both directions, you better bet that I will do that. And I'm in 3 different leagues. 2 of them are from people who live in Batavia. 1 of them are people who live in Rochester. My sister is in 4. 2 of them are Batavia people. 2 of them are Buffalo people. So you have a huge population here, and you also have to think about, you have people in Wyoming County and people in Orleans County that would also come into Batavia. So I am in favor of this. I'm in favor of the turf field and the hardwood portion. I think it would be a great thing. I wish we'd have 2 turf fields. That would be awesome. But for young people, for people who want sports, as Matt said, there's a growing demand for it. I think that this is a great idea if you guys can make it work financially.
John Roach, 116 Grandview Terrace, Batavia. No, a big surprise. This sounds a lot like what we heard with the baseball stadium. Build it and they will come. And we're looking at having a stadium that we're going to have to think about what the hell we're going to do with it. Not long ago, this council approved a study when Mr. Molina was still here, projecting a population decline of about 9%. The only demographic that they expected to go up would be quite the older crowd moving back into the city to be closer to things like the hospital. So based on the study that you had just a few years ago, predicting a 9% decline over a 10-year period of the younger group, I don't see who the heck is going to be using this thing. Now, true, we might draw people in, but then you're going to look at that tax burden. Councilwoman mentioned we have a police station that has to be built. The current ice rink certainly needs to be rebuilt. So, I mean, there's $4 million right there. You have some other expenses coming up. I don't see where you're going to be able to afford it. Most people right now say they're overtaxed. They would be happy if taxes actually went down, and not terribly realistic, but to suddenly go build a new sports complex, that's just going to add to the burden. And this $30 million that was mentioned didn't include the debt service. I don't know exactly what the debt service over 20, 30 years on 30 million might be, but that's not going to be cheap, along with the $60 million forecasted county jail, which we now know could also go up quite a bit. So unless the county decided to go in with it, I'd say absolutely not, and I know what the county's going to say. I mean, they don't want to spend what they're spending now, let alone go into a big sports complex. So thank you.
Anyone else? No, you can just speak if you want.
I just, I certainly can understand and respect what Mr. Roach is saying, but I'm thinking along the lines of if we're going to do this, I mean, we have some wonderful people within the city staff that are great at hunting down grant money and things like that. So I wouldn't say that this would be totally on the taxpayer's shoulders. I can't see putting that entire amount in a budget to do something like this. I'm certainly hopeful that there would be some grant money out there, both state and federal level grant money that we could probably hunt down to help us out here. And like the presenter mentioned too, this is something, if we were to do this, that we might look to the private sector to help out as well. So there's probably a number of different options to finance something like this. And of course, we're in just the preliminary stages of looking at what the possibilities of the facility is, and the next step would be obviously to look at what are the possibilities of financing something like this, that the taxpayer would not be burdened with the entire bill. So just to mention that to you. I'm certainly, like I say, certainly understand what Mr. Roach is saying, and I would agree with him 100% that we certainly wouldn't want the taxpayer to pay for this entire project.
Ms. Pacino?
Build it or not build it, what we do have to consider is making the decision to fix the facilities over there. We can't let it just rot away.
Exactly.
Then we've wasted our time so far.
Exactly.
I think we have to seriously consider at least bringing it up to standard.
Exactly.
Right. And like they said, this is, if I'm not mistaken, that's a brownfield area.
Right.
It's ripe for grants and such that would help with that. So this might be an actual opportunity on the other side to see what kind of proposals we could get to maybe make the whole thing a private entity. And I know we are taking steps to separate the heating equipment and such from the fire department and the ice arena so that at some point down the line it can be separated. It'd be attached as a building, but you can technically have somebody else own the other half of the building and maintain it. But again, very early stages. It's an idea. This is how things start, and then we see where they go from there. So it doesn't hurt to let our economic development people look into this, and the word will get out, and we'll get public feedback, and we'll.
That's right.
And like I said, it might be some opportunity to to combine other features. I know they were talking about some type of an indoor skate park. Maybe there's a private entity that would want to kind of put all this together. Whose phone is that?
It's my.
It's
Are you serious, Bruno Mars? Someone look to be your kid.
Well, now she's,
If anybody can't tell, my day has been going totally wacky, so this does not surprise me whatsoever. Gregory, did you want to speak? Come up. We're about ready to close this out, so anyone else, please let me know now, because we're about ready to.
My name is Gregory Halleck. I live at 8 Davis Avenue, Batavia. I know I represent Go Art and arts and culture, but my kids still aren't. My daughter does figure skating, my son plays soccer, so I'm still avidly for this. But on a different note, I'd like you to consider all the avenues that could go into grant writing for this, that arts and culture, figure skating fits in our realm. Figure skating is a dance, so that is, I think there's many avenues that can go into this, and I would be more than happy as a part of the Arts Council and as a parent to be involved with that process.
Well, again, like I said, we're going to kind of heavily rely on economic development people they would know these avenues, but now that you've said that, that reminds them that.
Because I would think most people are going to put arts and culture far away from sports.
Oh, no, that makes
But
sense, because
there's a
that would be sometime, yeah, on the ice, for sure.
I mean, also, and going beyond that, you can put dance performances in there, cheer competitions,
Yeah.
all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure. Like I said, it's at early stages, but now's the time to throw it out there and see who's offering to maybe help us fund it, so.
Yes.
Yeah, I just,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to say this is a great starting point. It's a great amount of work went into this and a lot of projections here, and I think there's a lot of considerations. And number one is starting with the college. They have this beautiful new field house there, which could facilitate having a much smaller rink building using the field house facilities and combined with it. So I think there's a lot of things to look at. And two, maybe the city doesn't want to even be in the ice rink business anymore. There was a major rink south of Lockport, and I think that's the one that Councilperson Christian was talking about that closed. And it was a huge operation, and the economics and all the rest of that. But I think this is the one time, whatever we do, we can do it right for a change. And, you know, this thing was never, everybody admits, it shouldn't have been part of the fire station, that's for sure. It was what everyone thought would save some money, ended up costing more in the end.
Well, and the thing to remember is they're talking almost $250,000 in debt every year of being, you know, that you have to subsidize this constantly to keep it running. It's not like it's going to even break even. And most likely it won't break even. And that's a constant burden on future people who live here that are going to, even when it's paid off, they're still going to have to maintain it, and they're still going to have to pay for that lack of breaking even part.
You know, looking at, we are mandated, we have to do something with the police station. Without about it, there's no discussion. This is.
I know, the timing is, that's the only problem with this, the timing is kind of rough, but never say never. I'm always confident that things will work out.
yes, absolutely.
So,
Thank
it's
you.
definitely something to think about. I mean, we should definitely at least explore it. It doesn't hurt to do that.
Well, at least we know we're dealing with the
Yes,
study.
that's what the feasibility study does, kind of puts it on paper and gets it out there, so. Anyone else?
Well, if hockey players would sing while they skate, that would fall under Gregory's.
There you go.
Moving on, motion to close. Mr. Bykowski, seconded by Mr. Veely. Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Feely? Yes. Casino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
We have to do the ratification of the sales tax. You want to explain that again?
Yes, Council President, members of council, I received contact from the Comptroller's Office Council last week. They're in the process of working on the review for the 40-year sales tax agreement. Everything is proceeding in due course, but they simply asked, because we had attached the agreement to the resolution that council approved to authorize execution of the agreement. They didn't want to have a discrepancy, which has apparently happened in other jurisdictions, as to exactly which form of the agreement, which draft of the agreement was actually approved by the city versus what was approved by the county. So they simply asked for a ratifying resolution that specifies the date and the exact agreement that was authorized by the city of Batavia. So that's what we've prepared. The resolution is fairly basic, straightforward. It's been reviewed and approved as to form as to the Comptroller's Council. So simply ask that this be moved forward to the business meeting, and then I will provide a certified copy to the Comptroller's Council, and they'll add that to the packet as it's proceeding in its review.
So that, when you say move to the business meeting, you mean tonight's scheduled business meeting?
Correct.
So we can get this thing out as quickly.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, it seems rather innocuous, but I guess when you think about what the Comptroller's Office deals with statewide, there might have been instances that they alluded to where one jurisdiction said we approved X, another jurisdiction said we approved Y. We know what was approved, we had the agreement attached to it, but for the sake of simplicity and having a 40-year agreement in place and no confusion at the Comptroller's Office, I would suggest, and I would respectfully suggest that we move it to the business meeting and just act on that, and I'll provide them with the
Pretty
red.
much have no choice, because it has to be done by the end of this year, correct?
Correct, from the standpoint of
Moved it to
timing.
the next
Yeah,
business meeting,
yeah.
it'd be in next year, we'd.
Yeah, and again, as to the actual agreement, the agreement has already been signed.
Right.
It's a matter of just clarifying for the Comptroller's Office satisfaction that this is the exact agreement that
And they
they.
need to approve it as part of this process, so, and this is the way to get it out there as quickly as possible. So it's pretty much the same thing, I mean, it is the same thing.
Yeah,
Does
it's
anyone have
exact-
any questions or concerns about it?
Nothing has changed with respect to the agreement. It's the exact signed, dated agreement that was executed by Council President and the Legislative Chair of Genesee County. It's
there's
just
a copy
simply
right here, I
attaching and referencing that document, so there's, in the Comptroller's perspective, no question about what the City of Batavia has authorized.
Okay, so, we all in consensus to move this forward to tonight's business? Okay, that moves forward. Council meetings for 2020, that's another thing that's going to move, because otherwise we won't have a meeting on the 13th.
That's true, yeah.
So, is there any, we've looked at this several times and made sure we were using the right calendar.
We did, and looked at it for about the 10th time this afternoon with the 2020 calendar, and it does correspond with next year.
And I see there's this, the regular 2 Tuesdays that
Yes.
tends to always happen because
Yep,
of holidays.
there are 3 months in there, July, August, and December, when we have one meeting that has conference and business in the same meeting.
And I believe January 13th meeting will be an organizational meeting.
Yes.
As every 2 years we do that, so
Now-
that, unless someone has a problem and needs that to happen sooner, we
When are
can.
we gonna have our oath of office meeting? It's supposed to be before January the 1st.
You can take your oath of office at a meeting, or you
No.
could do it at any time. You could even do it, can you do it tonight?
I realize,
Too early.
no, I realize that, but the thing of it is, whenever we held them before, not with you, but we've always had our family invited, and it would be nice if we had the opportunity to have that. We had it on January the 1st, and it was in the afternoon. And, as I recall, it was the Republican Party that brought the cookies and pop and things like that for people. But, no, you weren't here then.
No, I get it.
No.
No, I mean, it's whatever you want. That's why we're throwing it out there. We
But-
can change that first meeting and leave that earlier, but then, or just have a ceremonial meeting. Or you could even do it this way. We can schedule that meeting to be the swearing-in meeting, but you can do it, we've done it twice. I mean, we came in and got signed, we swore in at the clerk's office when we had a chance, and then we did the ceremonial swearing-in for the
That's not
families
bad.
and whatnot on the day that
That's
was.
not bad.
And I think that's what we've done the last 2
13th.
times when I got sworn in.
13.
The 13th?
So we can set that up as for your family and whatnot, and then you can come in and get officially sworn in the event
Beforehand.
that something happens January 1st, you're still have.
And then we'll do-
We're all here anyway.
So we can make
13th.
arrangements with Heidi to come down to your office.
That's fine with you?
Just come anytime, isn't it?
Just come anytime.
You come
I'm
anytime?
volunteering your services, but I know that you've done it in the past. I don't want to. So, yeah, just set up with Heidi and then come in and do it. And then if we will do it again on the 13th, if you want to all stand up and do it all at once and make a nice
Very nice,
presentation for your family, you can gladly do that on the 13th.
very nice.
We could even do that at the very beginning of the council meeting, so they don't have to.
That would be nice.
Is that fine?
I'd like to do it with my family, because my grandson was a baby, and he came to my
Okay.
inauguration, and...
So would the 13th apply? I'm
And-
asking you, would the 13th apply?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
I'm going to see Heidi.
Anything else?
He had his tux on, and he was just a little baby.
I got it.
He's,
I can picture it. Thank
He's
you.
wearing a tux this time?
he's gonna be an attorney
Are
now.
we in consensus to move that to the,
Yes.
Okay.
thank you. Various committees and boards.
Oh, my
Yes.
God.
Yes.
Yes.
It's all good, we move that.
That all looks good?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody's good with that?
Yes,
Are we in consensus to move that forward?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Part-time judge. We don't wanna move
That's
that.
okay.
I don't know, we gotta think about that, yeah. No, I'm.
Okay, just a little background. The council met this past week. We interviewed the candidates, and we chose a candidate, and we chose Dave Sally, who I believe is here. Thank you, Dave.
Yes.
So at this point, we will, if we, a consensus, we'll move this to the business, and at the
Correct.
business, we'll sign the resolution, and then we'll swear him in.
Yes, yes,
Perfect.
Okay?
perfect.
We in consensus to move that then?
Yes,
Okay, that
yes.
moves. Retirement reserve transfer. Marty, do you want to cover that?
Absolutely. This one is resolving a disagreement, discrepancy between attorneys and auditors. Attorneys felt that one particular, reserve wouldn't work well. Auditors felt a particular reserve wouldn't work well. We said, let's just get this resolved. We have money in unassigned, general funds, unassigned fund balance that's not budgeted to be able to take care of this type of expense. So what we're trying to do is actually get ourselves in a position to just take care of the paperwork so we satisfy both our legal and our financial auditing requirements. This is a housekeeping matter. This had to do with the Mike Drew issue that was ultimately taken care of. The council's already taken care of all of that, but this is a matter of making sure that we make peace with both the legal and the financial sides.
Okay. Any questions or concerns? Okay, so this would get moved to tonight's, or?
Yes, sir.
This gets moved tonight. So we're in consensus to move that to tonight's business. Additional police officer position.
Point of order, I think
Revolving
you
loan,
skipped
I'm sorry.
one.
Revolving loan grant request.
Andrew is here to make his first official presentation.
It's an important one. I don't know how I missed this one.
Yes, Council President, council members, pleasure to be here. Very nice to meet you all in person. My name's Andrew McGuire. I'm the new director for the Batavia Development Corp. And the reason why I'm here tonight is for Go Art. They have submitted a application for $20,000 out of the revolving loan fund. In accordance with our policy, the funds would go towards building renovations, towards the foundation, roof and drainage, chimney, window, fence, and paint, as well as potentially the elevator inside. This is in our DRI boundary as well as our bid, and Go Art does a great job of exhausting as many venues as possible to seek funding. So with this request, they hope to continue to preserve a historic building that we all know.
So to get this straight, they're going to invest $218,000 based on R20 to help along with that.
Correct, yes. Yeah, so as you can see with the memo, there's multiple funding sources already that he has secured, Go Art has secured, as well as more applications to be submitted. So yes, he has submitted plenty of applications throughout various organizations to try to maximize bang for buck for this project.
Any questions from council members?
Good job.
It's great.
No, I think so too. So we're in consensus then to move this to the next business meeting. It wouldn't be tonight.
Yes.
Because we have to let the public kind of weigh in on this. So we're going to move this to the next available business meeting, which I believe would be sometime in January.
January, yeah.
Okay, so we move that forward.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members.
Now the additional police officer position.
We have an officer that is going to be retiring in the early part of this next year, and a request from the police chief. We have had a little bit of success, actually, we've had an incident this last time when we came up with a couple of positions, talked about retirements, the front loading on the positions. Those individuals, those candidates are doing well and moving through the academies and a couple of them moving, hopefully in a couple of months here into field training. And it seems to be working well. We're starting to see more officers actually to be able to be on the street. So we're feeling pretty good right now about this. And so we really do recommend front loading on this particular position. That way we can get someone in the academy, get them trained, and we don't have such a long waiting period. It's just so long. It's up to 9 months or more. If we wait until someone leaves and then do this, and I think it's better for morale for the police department, and it's better for the safety of the citizens.
Well, and as I read this, it's just, you're going to cover this with existing budgeting.
Correct.
You're not going to have to ask for additional money to cover this.
That's correct.
That is our intention, Council President. We have had several vacancies throughout the year, front-loading some of those future retirements has taken a little bit of a chunk out of that, but we feel pretty confident we're going to be able to get it in under our current budget. It's going to be tight, but we feel confident we'll get it in.
Okay. Any other, Kathy?
I support this additional officer 100%.
It's worked before, I mean.
And like Marty said, it's a safety issue, so I support it 100%.
Chief, have you received a letter from the individual retiring yet announcing that he will?
No, the individual that's referenced, and I do apologize, his name should not have appeared in the memo, but he is on medical leave at this point in time. He has told me that he is retiring as soon as he is cleared for duty. So he cannot obviously file his paperwork until he's cleared for duty. The officer in question has turned in all of his gear and everything, so he's definitely not going back to work.
Let's get him cleared for duty.
Well, that's up to the doctors. We certainly want to get him healthy.
Anyone else with any questions? So we're in consent, this one, does this have to go move to tonight's business meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're in consensus to move that to tonight's business, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The amended budget revenue expense accounts, police station.
This one has been 13 months of work to get to this point, frankly. There have been a lot of discussion, a lot of looking, a lot of hard work. We do have to give appreciation to both our senior staff at the police department and at the public works department and finance. Well, you know, it's really pretty much a team effort to try to get to the point where we're at right now. The feasibility amount that has been verified by the Public Works Department, they felt comfortable that a $50,000 amount would be good for a feasibility study, and which also deals with some of the pre-design work for police station over at the Alva parking lot area there at the corner of Bank Street and Alva Place. And we feel comfortable with it. We feel we're at the right spot at the right time to make this recommendation to council, and we ask that you move this forward to business, and let's get this going.
That's coming out of the facility reserve funds, correct?
Yes. And there are more than sufficient funds in there to be able to cover it.
And that goes to tonight's business, correct? Any questions or concerns? So we're moving it to the business? Okay, that moves. Okay, we're going to quickly adjourn and go right into the business meeting. So we can keep moving here. So motion to adjourn? Mr. Bayakowski, seconded by Mr. Veely. Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Bailey? Yes. Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Perez?
Yes.
Okay, I call to order the business meeting. You've all seen a copy of your October financials. Does everyone approve those? Do we have any questions or concerns about the financials? Okay, those are approved. You've also had your November 2019 minutes. Any omissions or concerns? Okay. We'll sign the agenda items. 126, 2019, the prosecutorial services with Genesee County. Mr. McGinnis. 127, 2019, the track loader purchase. Mr. Canali. 128, 2019, the seeker for the zoning change. The industrial zoning change seeker. Ms. Briggs. That's the lead agency we're setting up. 129, 2019, the zoning ordinance itself. Mr. Veely. 130, 2019, authorizing the Empire State Downtown Revitalization Initiative reimbursement grant for the city center. Mr. Canali. 131, 2019, sales tax allocation agreement ratification, Mr. McGinnis. 132, 2019, the council meeting schedule through 2020, Mr. Beely. 133, 2019, various committees and boards, Ms. Pacino. 134, 2019, part-time city court judge. I think Mr. Bayakowski wanted to do that. We'll give that to him. 135, 2019, the retirement reserve. Ms. Christian. 136, 2019, the additional police officer position, Ms. Briggs. And 137, 2019, the budget expense amendment, Mr. Veely. Bob, while you're gone, I gave you the resolution for the court judge.
It's got 137,
Just want to make sure you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
City attorney's report?
Yes, we continue to work on a variety of matters across the spectrum. At this point, there's nothing specific to report on.
Thank you. Any questions for the city attorney while we have, okay. City manager's report?
Only one item briefly. We announced this morning at the Batavia Development Corporation meeting that the Batavia players have signed the lease agreement for the city center area. So looks like we're moving forward.
I saw Pat announce it on his Facebook page about a week ago.
Yeah.
He kind of tipped everybody off.
Yep.
Committee reports? Go ahead.
Simply want to say very quickly, thank you, everyone who came to Christmas in the City. Bid was thrilled with the number of people who came. The parade was wonderful, and life is good.
Looked like a good turnout. Anyone else? Anything else about the parade and the horses? Public comments? Unfinished business?
I've got a few things just
Go ahead.
to follow up on. There was a couple items I brought to light that I wanted to look into. One was the stadium parking issue over at
Right.
Woodard Field, and then the S-curve issue. Have we come to any further ideas with that? The deer issue, just wanted an update on that. And then also, I'm just going to throw this into unfinished business because I guess it is unfinished business. I had a constituent call me with a concern with obviously the leaf problem. We've never got a chance to take advantage of all that nice weather. It just didn't last long enough for the city crews to get out and get all the leaves picked up. So obviously we've got a mess now, and she was concerned because a lot of her leaves got pushed down in front of her neighbor's driveway, who's an elderly woman, and so she went down and cleaned that up. She was just wondering what the plan of attack would be to clean up some of this mess, if we're ever able to. I explained to her, if Mother Nature doesn't let up, and we continue to get cold weather and snow, the leaves obviously aren't going to get picked up until springtime. So, but I was just wondering if maybe Matt could address that. Maybe possibly we put out a public notice, a media release, letting people know that unfortunately we weren't able to get to it. We'll get to it in the spring, whatever the game plan is to let the public know.
So let's start with that one, and then we'll work backwards. Matt?
Just they could.
Yes, the staff is, we're looking at the leaves actually today. We were looking to see if we could even try to get out to them. Everything's just a frozen mush mess. The forecast right now is, I think tomorrow's supposed to be somewhat dry. Wednesday, they're talking some snow, but if it's relatively minimal. So what we're kind of targeting at the moment is possibly to gear back up for Thursday and Friday. We are just very hesitant to commit to anything until we see that forecast, because it's not just a simple matter of in the morning having the guys go out and doing leaves. We've got to take all the plow equipment off the plows, pull all the spreaders out of the back and gear that up. So right now, as we talked about this morning, we're looking at possibly Thursday and Friday, but that's, really, we just got to look at the forecast and see where we're going with this. If there's an opportunity to get back out there and grab leaves, we are going to do that. But we are just, we got that snow, that Veterans Day snow. We lost about 10 days there where we would have been through the city an additional probably time and a half and had that, and we were just going to do one last sweep. We're still going to try to do that if we get any cooperation with the weather at all. So that's our game plan at the moment, and again, with an eye very much on the forecast.
Well, it was a double whammy because we got all that break in the action, and you put out the notice that, get your stuff out to the curb, and myself included, I rushed out there, took the only opportunity we had, got it all out to the curb, and then boom, it snowed again. You didn't have a chance to get it all done.
I'm sure that won't happen again. So.
But if we don't put out any kind of
People
release.
could bring them to the yard waste.
Yeah, I mean, the leaves, you're absolutely, I think the leaves are out there. When we had that, the Veterans Day one, it warmed up a little bit, but it never warmed up a lot where the snow melted, where we could get back at the leaves again.
It was a good melt today.
So like I said, we're looking at, right now, we're somewhat targeting Thursday and Friday to get out and try to pick up right from where we left off and start hitting those areas and keep going. And as the weather cooperates, we will do it. The yard waste station is remaining open through, I think, the 16th, off the top of my head, of December. So, I mean, that's available as well. But again, the homeowners can't do anything either. Their stuff's all under snow and everything else. So that's our plan of attack as we're speaking here Monday night.
Thank you.
The 14th?
What's your next thing up the list?
The stadium parking issue.
There was, we just put the signs up.
Oh, you did?
No, I said, that's our part of it, is we just put the signs up, Sean.
Yeah, so I did take a look at the stadium parking, and we are going to be writing a traffic order in order to push back some of that parking spaces around that entry and exit on Union Street. Quite honestly, it's one of those on my to-do list that I got to get done. And again, we kind of got to get it done in time for these guys to have some decent weather to put the signage up. I can say that I have not received any complaints since the end of football season. So I think, obviously with that heavy traffic and heavy parking demand that they had over there during the football season, and brand new stadium, everybody's excited, they want to see it. We're just hopeful that will dwindle off a little bit with the other sports, but certainly do understand the need for some parking restrictions over there. So we're going to do our best to try to push the parking spaces back at least a little bit, and then it'll be an enforcement issue as well. So we'll work with the school district to send out reminders, as well as trying to get an officer up there during the next first big event to kind of reinforce that with some parking tickets or parking, some reminders of that. So.
While you're up there, what about Jackson School? Did they look into that too? Wasn't there something to come up at a council meeting?
We are still looking into that now.
Because, I mean, there was supposed to be no parking across from the school there on South Jackson. And I don't know if people are just taking the liberty, or the signs are knocked down, or...
The signs are...
Signs are there.
I drove through there the other day. The signs behind the guardrail are not up. So there are sign posts, but there's no signs. So I do believe that the assistant chief reached out to Ray to see if we can get those signs put back up there so we can go into the enforcement part of that. And it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, because we do have a lot of parents and a lot of, quite honestly, school employees that use that as a parking and a drop-off. So I've got to have some further discussions with the school district itself to try to alleviate a little bit of that by maybe doing some different, approaching their student drop-off and bus drop-off a little bit differently. So we do have to have some conversations.
Yeah, there was some close calls there. That's why they posted it, because the kids were scooching across the street. And so they didn't want anybody parking across the street. It's more of a safety issue, not necessarily an annoyance issue. But you'll look into it.
Yep, and it is since it is, the age group we're talking about, is it a hand-to-hand? So the kids aren't just running out there by themselves. The kids are escorted by a parent.
They weren't supposed to be.
Yeah,
but the parents were just, quick, they're there, there's your teacher, and they were darting, and they had a couple of close calls there. So you're right, they were changing, they did some changes, maybe there's some more changes that need to be made.
Yep, so we're taking a look at that now.
Okay, what was your next thing up the list?
I know we talked about the S-curve. I know, Chief, you said that our hands are tied as far as speed limit. We really can only go down to 25, which is senseless. We had studied the traffic pattern, I believe, north, and then we're gonna look at it south.
The speed.
Or the speed, yeah.
You had put the trailer or something out there.
Yep. So the data going both ways was about the same. So we're looking at an average of 18 miles per hour through those S-curves. I would say there are a handful of close calls, but because of it's such a low speed, it is just that, a close call. We don't have a lot of accident data there. I think it's an area, particularly of the city, that people keep an eye on because they know that it's tight quarters, and when it gets busy in the afternoon, at nighttime's a different story when there's not a lot of traffic there. But I think reducing the speed limit to 25 doesn't gain you anything here, it just is more of a burden. And then it boils down to enforcement. When we have people that are traveling 18 miles an hour, there's no enforcement necessary. So really, it's just a matter of reminding motorists to be on the lookout for pedestrians, be on the lookout for vehicles turning into their lane. You know, and especially this time of year when the snow starts building up along the sides of the street, it does get a little hectic. But again, we don't have accident data that would show that we need to make any significant change there.
Well, which alludes to Gino's suggestion that maybe, at best, maybe what we could do is put up some kind of warning, I don't know whether it be signage, lights, I don't know. We might want to look into it.
It's just that it comes on you so fast. You're creeping out and you think it's okay, and then there's a car coming around the corner at 18 miles an hour, but it startles you because it's there. It's not, you don't have much view to see it coming from a ways away, so you can guesstimate it. You know, how far do I need to pull out? So that's what I think is caused. That's been the concern I had, is you're creeping out and you're looking one way, and Main Street is busy, and just when you think it's okay, you start to come out, and here comes a car around the other way. And
Well,
it's
and
just
coming
really
out,
boring.
and I don't want to belabor this point, coming out of the parking lot of the credit union is the worst
That's what I mean.
spot, because you have parking all along
Right,
that
and it
curve.
blocks your view.
You cannot see, so I don't know, maybe there's a solution to, maybe we can
Exactly.
eliminate parking for however many spaces to make that line of vision a little bit better.
That's a
I don't
thought.
know, you know.
That's a thought.
I would say that
I've never had a problem.
I've never had a problem
I've
either.
never had a problem there, never,
Never had a problem.
never.
On that curve and stay off our phones while we're texting.
Right.
Might be easier, right?
I'm just saying, I can see where people have a concern. It does kind of catch up on you. If you're in the right
Maybe they
place at the
shouldn't
wrong
be
time.
driving.
They just come out of nowhere, it seems like. But again, it's not speeding. It's just a car, and you're kind of half committed, and there's a car there now.
the only thing I would caution against putting up any type of blinking light or anything like that is it does create a distraction for a
Or then you
driver
ignore,
now.
then it becomes so much, you just ignore all the blinking lights.
Yeah,
that are not right.
that's one of the things with the signs and the blinking lights around town. It's like people get distracted with that. They got enough going on in their car. They don't need anything else, but.
I mean, again, there's no accidents there, so again.
No access, please don't
Get
get
the
the
blinking lights on Bank
Anything
Street,
else
and they
you have on
don't
your
do
list?
anything.
Just the deer, I just wanted an update on the deer issue,
Oh,
where
go ahead.
we stand.
You're on the resolution for the appointment of committees tonight, and that particular part will be addressed. The Department of Environmental Conservation is prepared and ready to help with this and participate. We have talked to the council president and asked that a member of council be willing to sit in on the deer committee. And we have individuals that have been vetted and are ready to go. We have already been doing our background research and relationship to the different areas of town where there are problems, and so we'll be ready to hit the ground running when the first meeting starts.
So as soon as we form the committee, then I'll put an email out and remind you, and if anybody's interested that wants to sit on that committee, then respond and we'll make that appointment. But the committee doesn't exist yet until
That's
we.
right, we have to
It's
vote
coming.
on it.
They're all named.
All right, any other questions or concerns? No, that's okay.
No, you're fine.
These are important things.
No, this is.
And that's the other thing too, just so you know, on the deer committee, we're going into budget. So there's probably gonna be some pause there. We're gonna get it formed and get it going. We want to give the department heads in that time to get that budget done, and then we'll have some time to get back on that stuff. So just be patient with us. All right, Resolution 126, 2019, Mr. McGinnis.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to contract for prosecutorial services with Genesee County.
Seconded by Mr. Veely. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilperson McGinnis,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Christian,
Yes.
Karas,
Yes.
Bayakowski.
Yes.
Jankowski.
Yes.
Veely,
Yes.
Pacino.
Yes.
Canali.
Yes.
Resolution 127, 2019, Mr. Canali.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution awarding purchase of 2 compact track loaders.
Seconded by Mr. McGinnis. Any questions or concerns?
I just applaud the DPW for coming in with a good deal.
And I applaud being able to do this locally. That's the best part about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Canali,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Christian.
Yes.
Karas,
Yes.
Bayakowski.
Yes.
Jankowski.
Yes.
Veely,
Yes.
Pacino.
Yes.
Resolution 128, 2019, Ms. Briggs.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution establishing the City of Batavia as lead agency under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQR, for an amendment to the zoning section 190 to include self-storage in an I-1 and an I-2 district and determining significance under SEQR.
Ms. Christian is second. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Briggs.
Yes.
Christian.
Yes.
Karas,
Yes.
Bayakowski.
Yes.
Jankowski.
Yes.
Veely, Pacino.
Yes.
Canali.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Resolution 129, 2019, Mr. Veely.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 190 entitled Zoning of the City of Batavia Municipal Code to include self-storage in an I-1 and I-2 district.
Yeah.
Seconded by Mr. Bayakowski. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Veely,
Yes.
Pacino.
Yes.
Canali.
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Christian.
Yes.
Karas,
Yes.
Bayakowski.
Yes.
Jankowski.
Yes. Resolution 130, 2019, Mr. Canali.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to authorize the Council President and City Manager to execute all necessary documents to receive the Empire State Development Corporation Downtown Revitalization Initiative reimbursement grant to renovate and upgrade the city center concourse in downtown Batavia.
Seconded by Ms. Pacino. Any questions or concerns?
I just have a question out of curiosity. How long does it take to receive the actual financing, or is it the checks in the mail?
This particular one is a reimbursement grant, council member and council president. And so at the end of the project, and as we go in and get those reimbursements and costs and get them in, and then we get reimbursements for them. So there is a budgeting component related to either short-term bonding anticipation notes or bonding to be able to make sure the costs are covered until the completion of the project. So we're looking at, I believe it was until 2024 for this project to actually be completed, and that's actually good news for us because we are just now literally standing on the doorstep and we're ready to turn the doorknob and open the feasibility study first meeting. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
One other question. It's related to DRI, but off this particular one. Are you aware of, when they received DRI, I heard this, and I'm not sure if maybe I knew it, I forgot it. When they receive the money, they have to claim that as income and pay tax on that, like for a local business?
I have not heard one way or the other. There may be someone else who knows, but I
I was told by a
don't
local
know.
business person, I asked how the project was going, and they were, I don't think they were aware of it, or they found out, or whatever, but they're paying 27% tax on $1 million grant that's a big hunk of money not going into the project. And I don't know why the state is doing it that way. Maybe that's the only way they can do it.
Had not heard that, but we can look into it.
Rachel, do you know? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
the federal government, when they changed all the tax rules and regulations about 2 years ago, all grants are taxed. So when they go to a private entity, they will be taxed. And unless you were able to say that it was part of a development plan, so we've been working with like Ellicott Place to say that that was always part of a Batavia's development plan.
Right.
But again, that's up to their accountants and their attorneys.
Right.
So somebody gets a grant in the private sector, it is now taxed under the IRS code.
It just kind of took the wind out of my sails when I heard that. It just seemed like a poor.
When we met with all the grant recipients, we did talk through this, and we tried to find ways to show them where they might have fallen in one of the city previous plans.
It might be something he knew, but, you know, when hearing it coming from him directly, it was definitely a saddened state of affairs when he mentioned it. I was disappointed.
And it's not a state tax, it's federal.
No, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. So it's just sad that that happens that way, but. All right, so, any questions or concerns on this particular one for the city center? Okay, call the roll, please.
Councilperson Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely? Pacino?
Yes.
Resolution 131, 2019, Mr. McGinnis.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to ratify the executed amended and restated sales tax allocation agreement between the County of Genesee and the City of Batavia.
Seconded by Mr. Veely. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilperson McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
Resolution 132, 2019, the council meeting schedule. Mr. Veely.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution scheduling regular council meetings through December 31st, 2020.
Seconded by Mr. Bayakowski. Any questions or concerns? Can you call the roll, please?
Councilperson Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes. Resolution 133, 2019, Ms. Pacino.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to appoint members to various city committees and boards.
Seconded by Ms. Briggs. Questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Resolution 134, 2019, part-time judge, Mr. Bayakowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor to move a resolution appointing the position of part-time city court judge to Mr. David Solly.
Seconded by Ms. Christian. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll.
Councilperson Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
135, 2019, Ms. Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move a resolution to transfer expense from the retirement contribution reserve to the fire workers' compensation expense.
Seconded by Ms. Pacino. Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Resolution 136, 2019, Ms. Briggs.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution authorizing additional police officer position for the police department.
Seconded by
Yes.
Ms. Christian. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bayakowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
Pacino?
Yes.
Canali? McGinnis?
Yes.
Resolution 137, 2019, Mr. Veely.
Thank you, Council President. I move a resolution to amend the 2019-20 budget review and expense accounts.
Seconded. Briggs. Any questions or concerns? Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Veely? Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bykowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes. Before we go into executive session, do you want to swear Mr. Sailor in? Do that now? When do you do that?
I believe it's done by the unified court system.
Oh, so we don't do that here? Okay, I didn't know, I didn't know. We haven't done this in a while. Never mind, forgive me. It's one of those days, I told you that earlier. I have been off step all day. Okay. I was just trying to get you in a little quicker, that's all. And this probably takes place, is this gonna take place at the same time that the other judge is gonna get signed, or separately? Okay, I didn't know. Sorry for the mistake. Jump on me.
Part of this is under the city council, part of this is through OCA, so that the overlap of
That's where the
processes.
confusion came in. I didn't know if we did it or how they did it.
About that, you read.
How you just started.
Right. Take us into executive session then.
Whereas Article 7, Section 105(1)H of the Public Officers Law permits the legislative body of a municipality to enter into an executive session to discuss the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities or sale or exchange of securities held by such a public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Whereas Article 7, Section 105(1)E of the Public Officers Law permits the legislative body of a municipality to enter into executive session to discuss collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. Whereas Article 7, Section 105(1)F of the Public Officers Law permits the legislative body of a municipality to enter into executive session to discuss the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Batavia that upon approval of this motion, the City Council does hereby enter into executive session.
Seconded by Mr. Veely. Call the roll, please.
Councilperson Pacino?
Yes.
Canali?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Christian?
Yes.
Karas?
Yes.
Bykowski?
Yes.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Veely?
Yes.
On executive session.
Got too much input.